In Los Angeles, a band of gunmen invade an armored car company. They grab millions and then vanish. When the FBI does find suspects, insufficient evidence prevents their arrest. Agents and detectives try to penetrate the gunmen's secretive world to bring them to justice.
An armed robbery is a terrifying ordeal. When a gang descended on a Los Angeles cash vault, they threatened to kill anyone who resisted. The violent assault was the largest heist in U.S. history, and a piece of plastic was the only evidence. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The FBI, LAPD, and the IRS joined forces to unravel a complex network of money laundering, fraud, and a tight code of silence.
The Los Angeles warehouse district is a tough, bleak part of town. Street gangs and violence are common. The area's businesses are housed in nondescript buildings, many surrounded by barbed wire fences. One secure block was occupied by a leading armored car company. Friday night, September 13th, 1997. Employees of the armored car company were going about their routine, counting and sorting over $20 million. The money would be dispersed to automated teller machines across Los Angeles to meet the weekend demand for cash. There were 5 employees, including 2 security guards working the graveyard shift. At 12:30 a.m., one guard took his break in the lunchroom, as he did every night. But he wasn't alone.
Hands up on the floor now! We got one, we got the girl!
Five armed men subdued the guard in seconds.
Go! Let's go!
They dragged their hostage into an office where security monitors were kept. Then a second security guard, preparing to go home for the night, entered. Unarmed and out of uniform, he offered no resistance. Four of the assailants headed for the cash vault. The fifth held the guards at gunpoint and monitored the security cameras. The employees in the vault prep area were unaware that the building was under siege. The gunmen threatened to shoot if anyone disobeyed orders or made any sudden moves. The thieves now had direct access to the vault and its $20 million.
Put your head down! Get that head down! Number 3, stay on the work.
One man appeared to be in charge, barking orders to his accomplices.
No, don't touch that. This bin over here. This one right here. Number 5, everything's on schedule.
He also used a concealed radio headset to direct others somewhere outside the vault. When commanding his men, the leader didn't use names, only a numbered code. The robbers were coldly efficient, wasting no movement. In less than 10 minutes, they wheeled millions to the loading dock.
No, this one right here. Right here. Right here. Face down! Number 6, come on up, we're ready.
In the outer office, the gunman removed the surveillance recorder bolted to a desk. Seconds later, employees heard more destruction in the back office.
Let's go.
When the leader and another man returned, the employees no doubt feared it was to eliminate witnesses. But the assailants only stole the vault manager's pickup truck keys. Suddenly, it was quiet. Believing the gunman had fled, the guards risked freeing themselves.
Hold up, Johnson. I'll help you out in a minute.
They called 911. LAPD officers were immediately dispatched to the scene.
Okay, hold on. We're going to go down there right now.
Detective John Licata knew the case was unusual from the beginning.
We have experienced armored car robberies where the couriers or the truck are attacked. Got a robbery homicide. But this was the first time we've ever had a facility hit.
Officers secured the crime scene, and detectives began interviewing the employees. They said the 5 assailants seemed to move through the facility as if they had been there before. They didn't see them leave, but they heard the sound of a diesel engine pulling into, then out of the loading area. A 6th assailant must have been driving. One employee thought she recognized the voice of one of the gunmen as that of a former armored car driver for the company. She agreed to come to the station in the morning to study a photo lineup of former employees.
What's your name, sir?
Detectives spoke with the vault manager whose personal pickup truck and keys had been stolen. They wondered why his keys were taken and not the others. The manager said he parked in the same spot each night.
None of the suspects had asked him what the vehicle looked like. That led us to believe that whoever took his keys and had taken his vehicle knew him and his vehicle.
The manager agreed one of the men's voices was familiar, but he couldn't think of a name.
Went through my pockets and
He said he would contact them if it came to him. Forensic technicians took impressions of the facility's door locks. Initially, damage found on the doors and locks suggested the thieves used force to gain entry. But later examination by technicians in the police lab proved otherwise.
There was damage to the locks and the mechanisms, but not to the degree that it would have caused them to malfunction and to open.
They believed the gunman had used a key, then faked signs of forced entry. Company officials later estimated the loss at a staggering $18.9 million. The robbers knew what to take and what to leave behind.
All of the high cash bins, those bins that contained large amounts of cash, were taken. Those that didn't, that contained stamps and cash checks, were not taken.
This suggested that the assailants knew how the company stored its cash. The robbers also appeared to know where the company had installed its video surveillance recorders, including a backup machine that was hidden inside a locked cabinet in the back office. Employees had heard the assailants destroy the lock to get to the backup VCR.
The recording devices were kept in a cabinet, inaccessible to most employees. We interviewed all the facility employees, and 80% of them didn't know about the recording devices in the back office.
Investigators processed the loading area for any evidence of shoe prints, tire tracks, or clothing fibers. They found none. But they did discover what appeared to be a broken truck reflector or lens cover.
I personally spoke with the maintenance person that had cleaned the facility earlier in the day, and he assured me that that lens would have had to have been left there sometime in the evening. So it was surmised by us that it probably was left by the suspect's vehicle. And we didn't have a lot of clues as to what the vehicle would be, other than that reflector that was recovered, and we didn't know if it was a common item taken off of trucks or vehicles.
Since the money stolen from the facility was federally insured, the FBI joined the investigation. Special Agent John McCarran from the Los Angeles field office studied a crime scene video made by the Los Angeles police that detailed the sequence of the gunman's activities during the robbery.
And put them in this room here. This door is unlocked. They laid both victims down on the floor here, and they also removed their keys. Once they did that,
The 5 masked gunmen had pulled off the largest cash heist in U.S. history.
guard these two.
Agent McCarran hoped the public could help find them.
They also removed their keys.
The media was given general descriptions of the individuals that committed the robbery as far as height and weight and clothing, and the fact that the individuals were all armed, and there was a posting of a reward at the time.
Assistant U.S. Attorney Alka Sager hoped the vague descriptions would be enough to produce a lead.
The victims told us that they believed that the robbers were black, and that was based on the skin color that they saw through the eye holes of the mask. And they also told us that one of the robbers appeared to be lighter skinned, and he may be Hispanic. They were not able to see anybody's face.
But they had heard voices. At LAPD headquarters, one of the armored car company employees was shown a photo lineup.
Look at some photos and see if we can finger this guy. Okay? Take your time.
The woman believed she had recognized the voice of one of the robbers.
Don't rush. Take your time.
Now she was trying to match his voice to a face.
But here.
The lineup consisted of pictures of policemen mixed with several former armored car drivers and security officers. She picked one former driver as a possible match to the voice she heard on the night of the robbery.
This guy?
Yes.
Police learned that the man had recently left LA for New Orleans. Agents from the FBI's New Orleans field office approached the former armored car driver at his family's home there.
Fine. I'm Agent Marks from the FBI. Is my partner. Is there a problem? No problem.
He said he was unaware that the company had been robbed and was willing to cooperate.
So why not? Come on in. Sure.
Sit down in here.
He said that he had left his job on good terms a few weeks before the robbery.
It turned out that he was out of town on vacation during the robbery, and the agents were able to corroborate his statements about being out of town.
Thank you very much.
On the night of the robbery in Los Angeles, the man was 1,900 miles away in Louisiana.
Gentlemen, have a nice day. Thanks a lot.
So he was ruled out as a suspect.
Despite the false lead, investigators still believed the robbery had been an inside job. But whoever the gunmen were, they left little behind. And with $18.9 million in their hands, they could be anywhere. In September 1997, the FBI and the LAPD were unable to identify any of the 6 masked men who had robbed an armored car company of nearly $19 million. They believed at least one was a current or former employee, since the gang entered the building with a key and knew where hidden surveillance equipment was.
You made mention at the scene.
In a second interview, the vault manager on duty during the heist realized he recognized the voice of the lead gunman.
Plus, he just got let go, too, so maybe he's
He believed the man was Alan Pace, a former company employee. He thought Pace was one of the 2 gunmen who stole the keys to his pickup truck. Pace was familiar with the truck and had asked to borrow it before.
He would be the one to know what type of truck I drive.
FBI Special Agent John McCarran studied Pace's employment history.
Alan Pace was an employee who had worked for the company for approximately a year and a half. He was actually suspended the day prior to the robbery.
28-year-old Alan Pace had no criminal record, but when the company suspended him for disciplinary reasons, he had not turned in his keys. Investigators went to interview Pace at his home in Los Angeles.
Alan Pace.
Pace told them he knew about the robbery through the media, but assured the agents that he had nothing to do with the heist. He said he was at a party with his girlfriend on the night of the crime. He gave them her address and phone number. Investigators needed to verify Pace's alibi. They called in for a background check on the girlfriend. Detective John Licata learned she was a former employee too.
Mr. Pace's girlfriend worked in the facility in the cash vault area and specifically had a position that required her to handle the security video equipment. She had been terminated approximately 4 weeks prior to the robbery.
Investigators asked Pace's girlfriend about the night of the robbery. She confirmed that on that night, Pace and several of his friends attended an all-night party in Long Beach. She and Pace stayed at the party through the early morning hours of the following day. And there were plenty of witnesses who saw them there. Though suspicious, Pace's alibi was corroborated, and it was enough to block investigators temporarily. They would need a different tack to keep the case moving forward.
Yeah, John Licata here. How you doing?
The only physical
got back in the
evidence
office.
was a cracked amber lens found at the crime scene.
We're going to take
They
that
believed it
lens.
came from a diesel truck used as one of the getaway vehicles.
Okay. I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you then. Bye-bye.
They needed to find that truck.
I got the assistance of some of my partners and half a dozen of us for the next 5 evenings between the hours of 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. Went to the location of where the armored car facility was and interviewed anyone that frequented the area either on foot or in a vehicle.
A week after the robbery, they patrolled the warehouse district near the scene of the crime. After several nights, they found a homeless man who lived on the streets in the area.
A few questions. What's your name?
Henry.
Henry. Henry, is this where you stay?
He said that on the night the robbery took place, he saw a mid-size rental truck idling near the armored car company.
What kind of truck?
It sounded like a diesel.
Big white truck?
He noticed it that night because usually there was little business or late-night traffic in the area. But he didn't see the driver. He'd never seen the truck there before or since.
Take care of yourself, Henry.
All right, sir.
The description of the diesel rental truck fit the victim's statements that they heard a diesel truck in the company loading area. Investigators suspected that the amber lens found in the loading area had fallen off that truck. Teams of agents and detectives canvassed facilities in the Los Angeles area that rented diesel trucks. They showed employees a photo of the partial lens found at the crime scene. Several recognized the lens as the type used on the running lights for a certain model of truck. The lenses were a problem because they frequently fell off and needed to be replaced.
There were 83 rental truck facilities that rented the truck that the lens most likely came off of. We subpoenaed documents from all the rental vehicles that they had rented 2 months prior to the robbery for a period of time 2 months after the robbery.
Investigators spent hours poring through the rental records. But there were no rentals by Alan Pace or his girlfriend. It looked like another dead end. Authorities contacted Assistant U.S. Attorney Alka Sager for legal advice on how to proceed.
You can't just go get a warrant because somebody's a suspect and you think that they did a crime. You have to have evidence that they committed the crime. Alan Pace had denied any involvement in the robbery and had even claimed that he was at another place. He had an alibi, which witnesses that we spoke to corroborated. So at that point in time, all we had was the fact that he was a disgruntled employee who had been fired the day before the robbery, and one of the employees believed that one of the robbers had a voice that was similar to his. And that clearly was not enough evidence.
To find out more, the FBI and LAPD began watching the former armored car company employee. If Pace was involved in the multi-million-dollar robbery, he might show signs of his newfound wealth.
We did do surveillance of Mr. Pace, and he did not appear to be living beyond his means. He didn't appear to be spending a lot of money. He didn't appear to have a lot of cash at his disposal.
Nothing implicated Pace in the robbery beyond the circumstantial evidence they already had. As the months passed, there was little movement on the case. The reward for information leading to a conviction now totaled $250,000.
Despite the extensive media publicity this case received and the rewards for any information about the perpetrators of this robbery, there were absolutely no leads, no forensic evidence, no eyewitnesses. The investigation just came to a grinding halt.
Though Pace was still the primary suspect, without more substantial evidence, the FBI was unable to make an arrest. For now, it appeared that Alan Pace and 5 accomplices had gotten away with nearly $19 million in cash. By September of 1998, a full year had passed since 6 masked gunmen made off with almost $19 million. The prime suspect was Alan Pace, a former armored car company employee, suspended the day before the crime. Assistant U.S. Attorney Alka Sager was frustrated by the lack of evidence against Pace.
It didn't appear that he was out there spending money. It didn't appear that he had the fruits of the crime. So there really wasn't any legal basis to go out and arrest him or even to search his house.
Then, press coverage of the one-year anniversary of the crime prompted a lead for case agent John McCarran. An informant called the FBI, saying he thought he might know one of the robbers. Investigators went to the informant's home in suburban Los Angeles. The informant explained he had been an employee of the armored car company a year earlier, around the time of the robbery. He had since left to become a real estate agent. He claimed that shortly after the robbery, he was given $100,000 in cash to purchase a home for a man he knew, Eugene Hill. Hill asked that the deed to the home be listed in the name of his girlfriend. At his girlfriend's apartment, Hill stored a trunk filled with smaller boxes. He gave one of the boxes to the informant. It contained cash, still bundled by bank wrappers, totaling $100,000.
The informant, when he received the money, noticed that the $10,000 bundles had these bank straps on them. He kept those bank straps.
They were dated the 2 days prior to the heist.
We were able to later determine the paper-type wrappers actually came from some of the money stolen from the armored car company.
The informant said Hill changed his mind and asked for the money back, but in cashier's checks, not cash. The informant had kept $15,000, and Hill had recently begun threatening him. He hoped the FBI could protect him. Eugene Hill had no criminal record and had never worked at the armored car company. But a background check revealed Hill had a connection with prime suspect Alan Pace. Both had worked for another security agency in Los Angeles. Investigators began surveillance on Hill. At one point, they followed him to a business named Extreme Entertainment. The company billed itself as an entertainment service that provided everything from children's games to exotic dancers. Business records revealed that Eugene Hill was a partner in the company, along with Alan Pace. Investigators suspected that Extreme Entertainment was likely established to launder money from the robbery.
The Internal Revenue Service was brought on board and supplied with information from records and documents which would assist us in preparing money laundering charges against some of these individuals.
The investigative team learned more about the company. Besides Alan Pace and Eugene Hill, Extreme Entertainment listed two other men as partners, Terry Brown and Fred McCrary. The four had worked together at the same LA security agency before Alan Pace was hired at the armored car company. Extreme Entertainment's accounting books looked suspicious to Los Angeles IRS Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Philip Mullins.
There were 4 suspected robbers involved in Extreme Entertainment. Extreme Entertainment wasn't really generating very much income, but there was a lot of cash going through the business, into the bank accounts, and then a lot of money being paid out in salaries.
Investigators began to dig deeper into the financial backgrounds of the 4 partners. They subpoenaed bank statements, credit card reports, and tax returns. In the personal bank records of Eugene Hill, they found the suspect had a second source of income.
One of the things that we discovered were deposits of checks from a company called Rainforest. Now, we'd never heard of Rainforest, and we didn't know what kind of company it was, so we went and looked at the Rainforest bank records. And we found that in addition to writing regular monthly checks to Eugene Hill, Rainforest was also writing checks on a regular basis to somebody named Thomas Johnson.
Like Hill, Thomas Johnson's position at Rainforest was listed as a consultant. It was unclear what type of consultants they were. Rainforest was in business developing new recycling technologies. Johnson and Hill had invested $2 million in the company. The investment in a legitimate company was a classic money laundering scheme.
You take bad money, you invest it in something, you hide it, conceal it, and ultimately end up with something that looks legitimate.
Investigators felt confident that the 5 men were strong suspects, but so far, no evidence connected them directly to the $18.9 million robbery. LAPD Detective John Licata and his partner, Detective John Wong, cross-referenced the suspects' names against truck rental records from the time of the robbery.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Detective Wong made an important discovery.
My partner, John Wong, is the one that found the rental agreement from one of the suspects, Eugene Hill, in which he had rented the suspect's vehicle that was used that night just prior to the robbery and then returned just after the robbery.
We were able to locate that very truck. It was still in the Los Angeles area. And we got that truck and we removed the light assembly and had the FBI forensics lab compare it to the lens that was found on the loading dock area.
They needed to know if the amber lens had fallen off that truck. While waiting for the lab results, investigators looked further into suspect Thomas Johnson. Johnson lived in an expensive home in an upscale Las Vegas neighborhood.
The IRS conducted surveillance of his residence, and during that period of time, his girlfriend at the time was identified.
Agents flagged the girlfriend's name. If Vegas police ran into her, they should call LA. On the night of September 10th, 1999, nearly 2 years to the day after the robbery, the team in LA got a call and boarded a helicopter. There had been a domestic disturbance at Thomas Johnson's Las Vegas home. Johnson's girlfriend had called the police. They hoped to use the disturbance call as an opportunity to question the girlfriend. She alleged that Johnson had beaten her. She was more than willing to answer any questions they had about him. She said Johnson was laundering money through the Las Vegas casinos. He and a friend would buy thousands of dollars in chips that he would later have her exchange for cash. The exchange was always in amounts less than $10,000 to avoid filling out cash reports.
Thomas Johnson appeared to be very fond of gambling and appeared to have a lot of money with which to gamble. And it's a little tricky when you do these types of investigations because you don't know where that money is coming from, if it's perhaps gambling winnings that are then being used to conduct more gambling activities, or if it's perhaps what we thought, which was money from the robbery.
The girlfriend told investigators Johnson had mentioned a big job that he had taken part in back in Los Angeles. She said Johnson had invested in a company with a gambling friend. When investigators showed her a photo of Eugene Hill, she confirmed that he was Johnson's friend. The circumstantial evidence against Thomas Johnson, Alan Pace, and Eugene Hill was building. But it was still not enough to make any arrests. Agents would need to turn the suspects against one another if there was to be any hope of convictions.
Hands up! On the floor now!
2 years after 6 masked gunmen robbed an armored car company of $18.9 million, the FBI, IRS, and LAPD had gathered strong circumstantial evidence against 5 suspects, but had nothing that directly tied the men to the crime. The only physical evidence recovered was a cracked amber lens found in the loading area of the armored car company. Investigators believe the lens fell off a truck rented by suspect Eugene Hill the day before the robbery. They sent the broken lens and the other lenses from the truck's running lights to the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. Forensic metallurgist Michael Smith compared tool marks from the broken lens to those on the other lenses from the truck.
In this case, the marks look rather like the rings on a tree, and we attempt to see whether those marks line up or not.
Using a high-powered comparison microscope, he made an exact match. The same tool had made all the lenses in the same work session, indicating the broken lens had very likely come from the truck rented by Hill. The forensics results were compelling, but they did not definitively prove that Eugene Hill or the other 4 suspects were with the truck during the robbery. Assistant U.S. Attorney Alka Sager needed stronger evidence before authorizing arrests. She hoped Hill's girlfriends would provide it.
We had identified 2 of his girlfriends who also appeared to be spending not large amounts, but amounts of cash. Approximately 2 years after the robbery, we had gotten to the point where we needed to talk to these women that were in Eugene Hill's life.
We're going to need your cooperation.
Worried that charges might be filed against her, one of Hill's girlfriends rolled, telling investigators what she knew. She told them that after the date of the robbery, Hill suddenly had a lot of cash. She said Hill stored 2 footlockers filled with boxes of the cash in her apartment. She and a friend helped him count and sort thousands. Hill told her that before the new crisp bills could be spent, they needed to look worn. So she washed them. Usually, Thomas Johnson took part in the operation. She said they would go to Las Vegas, buy gambling chips with the washed bills, and then turn them in for new cash. Her story corroborated the statement previously given by Johnson's girlfriend. In return for her testimony, prosecutors agreed not to file charges against her. Next, FBI agents and LAPD detectives wanted to talk to Eugene Hill's sister. They had some questions about bank accounts the IRS had uncovered.
We were able to subpoena her records and determine that she had several accounts that she was holding in trust for Eugene Hill. Those records showed that there were a lot of unexplained cash deposits into those records, and it also appeared that checks were being written for motorcycles and vehicles and other consumer goods. So now we had a little bit more indication that Eugene Hill was perhaps spending money that he really couldn't explain receiving.
She agreed to talk to the investigators, but said she first needed to make a phone call. She stepped away and appeared to send a numeric page. Investigators asked her about the accounts she held for her brother. She was evasive and claimed to be unaware of any of her brother's financial matters. Moments after the phone call, Eugene Hill arrived.
Mr. Hill, how are you tonight?
When questioned, Hill denied any knowledge of the armored car company robbery. He told investigators that he didn't have time to answer their questions then, but he would meet them the next morning at their office. Loaded with cash, Hill was a significant flight risk. The FBI called Assistant U.S. Attorney Alka Sager for advice.
I was just getting ready for bed. The phone rang at home, and the agent said, this is what Mr. Hill wants to do. Should we let him go? And it was just one of those split-second, decisions that had to be made. And I made the decision that we were not going to let Eugene Hill go. We were going to arrest him that night.
As Hill was heading back to his car, he was placed under arrest. With only circumstantial evidence connecting him to the robbery, it was a risk. The law requires an expeditious trial, and the clock had begun to tick. On September 23, 1999, the FBI arrested Eugene Hill, one of 5 men suspected in an armored car company heist. Assistant U.S. Attorney Alka Sager had made the decision to arrest Hill, despite having only circumstantial evidence linking him to the crime.
By letting Hill go, there was a real danger that he would have alerted the others to the investigation. Given the amount of money that was taken in this robbery, it was apparent that these robbers would have the means to flee if they wanted to. And I just felt we couldn't take that chance.
A search of Hill's home provided no solid evidence tying Hill to the robbery. But investigators did discover ledgers that showed Hill had purchased real estate in other people's names. Prime suspect Alan Pace was also listed on Hill's ledgers as having purchased real estate in others' names. Finally, IRS agent Philip Mullins had something on Pace.
This was very significant in that there was over $1 million worth of real estate purchased for Alan Pace, that he had no legitimate source of income to purchase that property.
If convicted, Eugene Hill was facing up to 40 years in prison. Hoping for sentencing consideration, he confessed and promised to tell police everything he knew.
Who's this Alan?
He said Alan Pace recruited him and 3 others for the robbery.
Alan Pace told him that he had already spoken to Terry Brown and Freddie McCrary, and they were ready to do the job, and he wanted Eugene Hill to come on board and maybe bring another person in. So Eugene Hill approached Thomas Johnson, who agreed to participate, and that's where the plan was hatched.
Hill confirmed Pace was the mastermind of the heist and leader of the gang. Hill knew all of the men except for the 6th, who was a personal friend of Pace's. Pace told the others his plan could set them up for life.
5 to 6 employees at most.
Alan Pace told them that they would do the robbery on Friday night when there would be very few employees working there. He said that he knew who those employees were, that they wouldn't offer any resistance, and that it wouldn't be a problem. They would just tie up the employees, take the money, and they'd be in and out, within half an hour.
Following orders, Hill rented the diesel truck on the day of the robbery and met up with the gang at the party in Long Beach. Shortly before midnight, they left the party one by one. They drove to the warehouse district. Then 5 walked to the armored car company. During the robbery, 1 man stayed with the truck, waiting a few blocks away for the call to pull in. When the truck arrived, they loaded it up. Pace knew to take the surveillance equipment. They later transferred the money to a storage unit rented by Thomas Johnson, where it remained for 2 weeks. 4 of them left in the rental truck. Eugene Hill and Alan Pace drove away in the vault manager's pickup, since Pace knew where he parked each night. The 6 men disposed of the guns and VCRs, changed their clothes, and returned to the party as if nothing had happened. In the time it took others at the party to drink a couple more beers, the gang had committed the largest armed robbery in U.S. history. Investigators needed to corroborate Eugene Hill's story. FBI Special Agent John McCarran and his team believed Thomas Johnson should be the next one taken.
Agents in our Las Vegas field office were conducting surveillance on Thomas Johnson, and we knew his exact location. We followed him from one of the casinos.
Agents tailed Johnson as he visited several casinos. They did not know if the suspect was armed. To execute a safe arrest, agents needed to isolate Johnson outside and away from the casino crowd. They asked a casino security guard to approach him with a ruse. The guard told Johnson his car had been hit and that he needed to go outside to fill out a report. Johnson took the bait. As he checked his car, agents safely took him into custody. Investigators laid out the case against him and the possibility of decades in prison. Like Eugene Hill, Johnson cooperated in the hopes of a lighter sentence. Johnson verified Hill's version of the robbery and confirmed that Alan Pace was the leader. Investigators finally had sufficient evidence. They quickly arrested everyone but the leader.
We knew that Pace was aware of the earlier arrest of the other individuals. There was a warrant for his arrest, and he contacted me here at my office and told me that he wanted to self-surrender.
On February 28, 2000, Pace arrived at the LA Federal Building in the company of his lawyer. He made no statement and refused to cooperate with investigators. Pace was arrested and held without bail. 4 of the robbers pled guilty to robbery and conspiracy. Eugene Hill was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Thomas Johnson received 10 years. Fred McCrary received 7.5 years, and Terry Brown got 8. The 6th gunman, Eric Boyd, fought the charges against him and was found guilty and sentenced to 17 years. After a 3-week trial, Alan Pace, who had orchestrated the armed robbery, was sentenced to 24 years in prison. Agents seized all of the criminals' assets. They were able to account for about $5 million of the stolen money.
So about $14 million remains missing. We don't know where that money is, how it was spent, if it was spent. We just have no idea.
But whenever the felons are finally released, the FBI will be watching.
No one drops a dime. Okay.
If they make any moves to recover hidden money, they'll go straight back to jail. A young man plans elaborate crimes he believes will net him millions of dollars. As he puts his violent schemes in motion, the lives of innocent people and police officers mean nothing. The FBI tries to bring him to justice, but they soon find themselves up against a criminal enterprise.
Caught in the act, a disguised bank robber hurled explosives at police and disappeared in a hail of bullets. When police identified the suspect, they connected him to an armed kidnapping, but they couldn't find him. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The suspect's behavior was organized but unpredictable. Everyone leaves a trail, and agents hoped they could pick up the right one.
Martinez, California is a suburban city 30 miles north of Oakland. As dawn broke on October 15th, 1993, most of Martinez was still asleep. Nobody noticed the dark figure creeping across the rooftop of a downtown bank. He carried a top-of-the-line cordless power saw and drill with special motors that reduced noise. He seemed to know exactly where to cut into the roof. The masked man exploited a flaw in the bank's security system. The alarm was unable to detect movement in the crawl space between the roof and the bank's ceiling, allowing him to move freely. Just below was the bank's office. It was rigged with motion sensors. He knew if he descended below, he'd trip the bank's alarm. The masked man also knew bank employees would arrive in a few hours and deactivate the security system. He settled in and waited for them. Hours later, Martinez residents began their morning commutes. Two miles from the Martinez Bank, in the city of Pleasant Hill, a police operator answered a seemingly unrelated emergency call. Someone saw two Hispanic males entering a supermarket with guns in their waistbands.
Copy that, 220 on a move.
It was just before 9 a.m. Pleasant Hill police officer Bob Lauderdale responded to the supermarket.
M1, who's the reporting party?
He's still on the line, a payphone.
Well, my dispatcher advised that the person making the call was calling from a public phone directly across the street from the store.
He just hung up. He gave his name as Kyle Farrell.
I noticed a black male adult standing in front of the phone booth. He was wearing a black varsity type jacket with tan sleeves and carrying a full face motorcycle helmet.
Officer Lauderdale and Sergeant Gary Ezel entered the supermarket to investigate. They would begin an aisle-by-aisle search for the suspects. Back in the city of Martinez, the masked man had waited 3 hours in the crawl space above the bank's ceiling. Bank employees were preparing to open to the public. They deactivated the alarm when they arrived.
How's vacation? It was awesome.
Yeah.
Very relaxing.
Be back at the office.
Not really, but...
The masked man watched a teller punch in her access code to the ATM room where she would fill the machines with cash. It was his cue for a dramatic entrance. The door automatically locked behind the teller. The robber threatened to kill her co-worker if she didn't open the door. Then he opened it himself. The bank's manager was in the break room. She heard the commotion and glass breaking.
Put the money in the bag! Go to hell! Hurry up! Put the money in the bag!
She slipped out and called 911.
Hurry up! Put the money in the bag! Come on!
Report of a 211 bank in progress. 6678 Alhambra
Dispatch
Avenue.
alerted Martinez police.
The manager of the bank is advising that she heard someone in the other room shouting, "Get your hands up," to her tellers.
All available units raced to the bank with their sirens off.
Hurry up! Hurry up! Put the money in the bag! Hurry up! Hurry up! Get the money in there!
The robber left with a backpack stuffed full of cash. But to keep it, he'd have to evade Martinez police. Officers arrived at the front of the bank. Martinez and Pleasant Hill police departments had only 9 officers available to respond. And 2 of them were tied up on a suspicious call at a supermarket.
I need someone to the rear.
The robber saw an easy escape, the back of the bank, but he needed a diversion. Martinez traffic officer Earl Moffat moved to cover the rear of the bank. In his 10 years on the force, this would be the first time Officer Moffat would fire his weapon.
He's firing rounds at me, and he's only about 20 yards away. So what was going through my mind is just chaos.
As the gun battle continued, Pleasant Hill police were still investigating the 911 call about 2 men with weapons entering the supermarket.
No, I sure haven't.
None of the employees saw anything out of the ordinary.
Have you seen anything like this? I haven't seen anything like that.
Yes, I'm at the rear. Okay. Request mutual aid response from Pleasant Hill ASAP.
Okay, Bob, we gotta go.
All right.
Officer Lauderdale was immediately suspicious.
After we were unable to locate anybody matching that description, I thought the bank robbery in Martinez was too big of a coincidence.
In Martinez, the bank robbery suspect continued his firefight with Officer Moffat.
I couldn't copy. Sam 24 to 97.
His weapon empty, the officer was forced to reload. The gunman used the moment to his advantage. Moffat knew he would be vulnerable to ambush if he climbed over the fence. He followed procedure and called for backup. As officers cordoned off the neighborhood, Martinez police were joined in the investigation by the FBI and Supervisory Special Agent Bob Moore. The FBI automatically investigates all bank robberies. Any crime against those institutions is a federal offense.
We have concurrent jurisdiction and traditionally have worked bank robberies very closely with local police. When I first arrived, the scene was quite chaotic. We had been notified that a robbery had occurred and that a gunfight had ensued after the robbery.
Commander Tom Simonetti supervised the crime scene investigation for Martinez police.
At the crime scene, we found shell casings from a Glock 45 pistol, as well as expended rounds that had been fired at our officer.
FBI agents know most bank robberies are poorly planned attempts to get drug money. The evidence this robber left behind suggested a more sophisticated criminal.
The method of operation was so unique. You just don't see robberies committed every day by people dropping through the roof on a rope.
On the rooftop, evidence technicians processed the abandoned power tools. They found no fingerprints. Agents interviewed bank employees about their traumatic experience. They described the robber as a muscular black male in a red jacket. The average bank robbery nets just $3,000. The bank manager determined that the robber escaped with over $35,000. And by getting it from the ATM room, no die packs were placed in with the money. Technicians found no fingerprints, but discovered a shoe print on the desk where the robber landed. While the crime scene was being processed, Martinez police combed the neighborhood behind the bank for the masked suspect. They soon picked up his trail. It was marked by $20 bills that had fallen from his backpack. But the money trail abruptly ended at the closed end of a cul-de-sac, leaving no sign of the suspect. Pleasant Hill police officer Lauderdale was guarding the crime scene when he recognized someone in the crowd of onlookers.
I suddenly noticed that the subject I had seen making the 911 call was now standing in a group of people who were watching the activities at the bank robbery. I thought this was too much of a coincidence, seeing the same subject down at the shopping center and was now at the bank robbery in Martinez. I contacted the subject in order to identify him and find out what he was doing in the area. What are you doing here today?
The officer knew the 911 caller at the supermarket gave dispatchers the name of Kyle Farrell. Now the man said his name was Ural Wills.
Oh, it's around the corner. I just didn't want to interfere. All right.
It was suspicious enough for Officer Lauderdale to request the man to go to the police station for questioning.
The subject was surprisingly cooperative and had no problem with going to talk to Martinez detectives.
The man furnished Martinez police with a driver's license that seemed to confirm his name was Ural Wills. A check of his record revealed that 3 years earlier, in 1990, he was arrested for an armed robbery of a supermarket in Oakland, but was later acquitted. Despite the prior arrest, police had nothing linking the man to the Martinez bank robbery. They had no choice but to release him. They didn't know that uncovering the man's true identity would lead them to the bank robber who was willing to kill to escape police. In Martinez, California, a bank robber threatened employees' lives until he got what he came for. $35,000 in cash intended for the bank's ATM machines. Police searched for the suspect by following a trail of $20 bills near the crime scene until it ended in a residential cul-de-sac. For FBI Supervisory Special Agent Bob Moore, the end of the trail was itself a clue.
We don't have that yet. We're still waiting. The trail of $20 bills stopped there. So initially we assumed that there had been a getaway car somewhere near that end of that cul-de-sac.
Can you recall if anything early today
Martinez police interviewed residents who lived in the ordinarily quiet suburban area. One homeowner said that earlier in the day he was working in his front yard. He noticed a brand new Jeep Cherokee speed past his home. He thought the white female behind the wheel might have been just a reckless teenager. The witness said the vehicle had no license plates, only a placard from a nearby Jeep dealership. Several other witnesses in the neighborhood also saw the vehicle, but none of them could agree on the Jeep's color.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you. I may call on you again.
Supervisory Special Agent Bob Moore pursued the vehicle lead.
Yes, Bob Moore with the FBI. How you doing?
He called the dealership advertised on the SUV and learned they sold over 60 new Jeep Cherokees in the past 3 months.
We began identifying the people who had purchased those cars with negative results.
Each Jeep Cherokee had to be investigated. Martinez Police Commander Tom Simonetti knew it would be painstaking work.
We also talked to several of the registered owners of new Jeeps, and they had either no criminal record or they had been out of town and were able to prove that they weren't involved in the robbery. We found that one had been stolen from a nearby BART station. The vehicle was recovered in the city of Concord, and after investigating it and processing it, it was determined that it was not involved in the crime. The last 2 Jeeps that we looked at were both sold to a rental car company in the city of Antioch.
This is what we have here. Anything else?
Agents went to the rental company to investigate the last 2 vehicles.
You can give me the rental paperwork on this last week. I need to know.
They requested copies of the rental contracts. They learned one of the Jeeps was rented the day before the robbery and returned the following evening. The name on the contract was one Ural Wills, the name used by the motorcyclist in the Martinez Bank parking lot, who was also the same man police observed making a 911 call near a Pleasant Hill supermarket. Martinez police needed to clear up the question of how Ural Wills could have simultaneously fled from the area in a Jeep and been spotted in the bank's parking lot as an onlooker. For answers, they turned to Officer Lauderdale.
Take a quick look at these. When I presented the picture of Ural Wills and in the photo lineup to Officer Lauderdale, he identified a different person as Ural Wills.
Lauderdale picked the photo of Doug Jones, a known criminal associate of Ural Wills.
In looking into Mr. Wills's criminal history, we determined that he had an accomplice who had committed several crimes with him.
Detectives believed that the accomplice, Doug Jones, posed as Wills at the scene of the robbery to throw off police. They now considered Wills their prime suspect. To agents, it was clear why Jones made the call while the bank robbery was in progress.
Yeah, that's who I contacted.
The planning of this included the attempt to create a diversion of the police by making a 911 call to the Pleasant Hill Police Department.
Martinez police ran a more detailed background check on Ural Wills. They spoke to the Oakland detectives that arrested him 3 years ago for a supermarket robbery. They expressed their frustration that he was later acquitted. Martinez commander Tom Simonetti learned of yet another recent arrest of Ural Wills.
During this investigation, we had found that Mr. Wills had been arrested by the California Highway Patrol for carrying a loaded Glock pistol.
Martinez police discovered that the bank robber also used a Glock pistol. Ballistics tests on the recovered bullets revealed that they were from a Glock 9mm. Martinez investigators also learned from Oakland criminal informants that Wills often preyed on other criminals.
He had made several armed robberies of known drug dealers in the city of Oakland, which led us to believe we were dealing with somebody who either wasn't afraid or was very brazen in his criminal activity.
The same criminal informants gave police insight to Ural Wills' methods of operation. They said he often used female getaway drivers because Wills believed they were less suspicious to police. The fact that a woman was seen behind the wheel of the Jeep was consistent with Wills' criminal history. From the auto rental contracts, agents were able to trace Ural Wills' financial records.
The Jeep Cherokee had been paid for with a credit card by Wills. We determined through subpoenas that the credit card had been issued by a credit union in Berkeley.
From Berkeley Police. I'd like to know if Mr. Ural Wills...
They also learned Wills had a savings account at the credit union, but found no unusually large deposits that could be linked to the Martinez bank robbery.
We asked the employees at the credit union if he were to appear at the credit union to call the Berkeley Police Department.
Thank you very much.
Even without any suspicious bank deposits, agents and Martinez police commander Tom Simonetti still believed evidence implicated Wills in the bank robbery. Wills had an apartment in Antioch, California, 20 miles east of Martinez.
Based on the information compiled by the Martinez Police Department, the FBI, and the Antioch Police Department, we were able to obtain a federal search warrant of Mr. Wills' apartment in the city of Antioch.
30 days after the bank robbery, FBI agents and a police SWAT team prepared to execute the search warrant on Wills' apartment. They knew he had already fired 10 rounds at a Martinez police officer. The SWAT team suspected Wills would shoot again. FBI agents and a Martinez police SWAT team were serving a search warrant on an apartment belonging to bank robbery suspect Ural Wills. They found one man in the apartment. The SWAT team quickly determined he was not Wills. They identified him as Doug Jones, who was a known criminal accomplice of Ural Wills, as well as Wills' roommate. Jones was the man seen making the 911 call near a supermarket before the Martinez bank robbery, and the man spotted in the bank parking lot after the robbery. Officers removed Jones from the apartment and took him to the station for questioning. As investigators executed their search warrant, they found several items of interest, including a bulletproof vest. Agents also found a red jacket that matched witness descriptions of the bank robber's clothing. In the bedroom, they identified a pair of sneakers as the type worn by the robber. They found an even more telling clue inside one of the shoes. $3,000, all in $20 bills. The stolen money from the Martinez bank was also entirely in $20 bills. The shoes were sent to the lab where the soles could be compared to a shoe print recovered from the Martinez bank robbery. Detectives also uncovered hospital bills that suggested Wills was injured on the day of the bank robbery. Martinez Police Commander Tom Simonetti followed up.
Upon contacting the doctor at the hospital, he told us that Mr. Wills had told him that he slipped on a wet floor at a grocery store and broke his foot. The doctor, however, pointed out that the injury was more consistent with a hard impact, in particular a straight down impact from falling or dropping off something.
Wills was further tied to the crime when analysts confirmed one of the shoes found in his apartment matched the shoe print taken at the scene of the Martinez robbery. At the police station,
Where is Mr. Wills?
agents questioned Wills' roommate and criminal associate, Doug Jones. As suspicious as Jones' actions were, police couldn't charge him with a crime or make him talk. If Jones knew where Wills was hiding, he wasn't telling investigators.
The biggest frustration in this case was trying to locate Mr. Wills after he knew we were looking for him.
222, go ahead.
We had searched his residence, we had contacted everybody that knew him, and there was no doubt he knew we were after him.
Agents knew Wills was a career criminal and were certain he would strike again. They spent nearly a month searching Bay Area neighborhoods Wills was known to frequent. They found no sign of the violent fugitive. While investigators hunted for Wills, he was planning a crime even more ambitious than his Martinez bank robbery. He gathered a group of accomplices and filled them in on his plan. Four days before Christmas in 1993, Wills' accomplices descended upon the Antioch, California home of jewelry store owner Gene Mayer and his wife Ruth. They posed as detectives investigating credit card fraud. Once the door was opened, they revealed their sinister purpose.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground! You're too low, man! Get on the ground now! Get down there! Get down! Just stay quiet. You won't get hurt. Shut up! Shut up! Now!
Two bound the couple with duct tape, while a third moved toward the back of the house to look for a safe.
You guys stay quiet. Don't move. You won't get hurt. You got the safe? Good. Let's go. Get up. Get up. Get up. Get up there.
The men told Gene Mayer they were kidnapping his wife. They said they'd phone with the details on how he could retrieve her. Mayer could do nothing, as Ural Wills' accomplices left with his wife and a safe full of jewelry. They used Mrs. Mayer's Suburban as their getaway vehicle.
Get in there. Let's go.
Just 10 minutes later, Gene Mayer freed himself and called 911. Antioch police responded. The scene was supervised by Sergeant Scott Williford.
When I arrived at the Mayer residence, officers were in the process of cordoning off the crime scene with police tape and barriers. I went inside the residence, and Gene Mayer was in the process of being interviewed. He was very traumatized.
Got to do it. Get after it.
Detectives tried to focus Mr. Mayer on describing his wife's abductors, but he got only brief glances at them.
Okay. What did they take? Well, it took the
As detectives processed the house for evidence, they discovered a ransom note.
One was white, one was...
Mayer never saw the kidnappers leave it. The note warned him not to contact the authorities. Gene Mayer worried that he might have made a mistake by calling police. He feared the kidnappers would retaliate by killing his wife. To help find Mrs. Mayer, Antioch police requested assistance from the FBI. They searched for any sign of Ruth Mayer's Suburban that her abductors used as a getaway vehicle. Investigators knew the chances of finding a kidnapping victim alive diminish the longer the victim is held captive. Officers in Antioch and neighboring communities urgently scoured parking lots at shopping centers, thinking the kidnappers might have abandoned Mrs. Mayer's SUV and switched to another vehicle.
Yeah, we'll go back.
They found nothing.
Still on the airport road.
You've got to do it. Get after it. I mean,
Detectives learned that the jewelry in the stolen safe was worth $400,000. But Mr. Mayer wasn't concerned about the jewelry. He wanted his wife returned unharmed. Blindfolded during her abduction, Ruth Mayer had no idea where she was or what the kidnappers had in store for her. Bank robbery suspect Ural Wills used a team of accomplices to rob a jewelry store owner and kidnap his wife. Inside the Mayer home, Antioch police analyzed the ransom note left behind by the suspects. The kidnappers demanded $2 million for the safe return of Mrs. Mayer. Police anticipated they would phone with instructions. Technicians installed phone traps to trace and record any incoming calls. But none came. For more leads, Antioch Police Sergeant Scott Williford gathered details about the jewelry stolen from the house.
I want you guys to do your job.
If any of it turned up, it might put them on the trail of the kidnappers.
Since Mr. Mayer was a jeweler, he had specific detailed information on the description of all the jewelry. We were able to provide or compile a detailed list and put it out to other agencies regarding the stolen property.
The FBI brought additional resources and helped coordinate the search for any sign of Mrs. Mayer or the Suburban her abductors stole from her driveway. By the following morning, investigators were still combing the Mayer's neighborhood for clues.
Teams of officers and agents began talking to people in the neighborhood. We were knocking on doors asking if people had seen anything suspicious in the area.
In addition to interviewing neighbors, investigators like Antioch Police Sergeant Scott Williford turned to the media for help.
We did everything possibly that we could to get the information out to the public so we could have the public's assistance in trying to locate Ruth Mayer.
Hundreds of volunteers distributed over 8,000 leaflets throughout the Bay Area. The leaflets had photos of Mrs. Mayer and a description of her Suburban. The strategy quickly brought results.
Within hours after the kidnapping, with the information put out to the other agencies, we located the Suburban that was stolen.
Technicians processed the vehicle for evidence. They found nothing useful. Investigators theorized that the kidnappers transferred Ruth Mayer to a second getaway vehicle. They took impressions of fresh tire tracks found at the scene. The impressions could be compared to the suspect's vehicle if it was found. Although they had found her vehicle, detectives still had no clue where Mrs. Mayer was being held. The kidnappers left her unattended for hours at a time. She used the opportunity to bite through her restraints. Mayer knew an escape attempt was too risky. Instead, she memorized the details of the garage in case she was ever asked to identify it. In the driveway, she saw the outline of a car. It was covered with a blue tarp. Mayer thought about shouting for help, but she was concerned what might happen if her abductors heard her. For the time being, she had no choice but to wait. Mr. Mayer quickly raised the money he hoped would bring his wife home. Wearing latex gloves, agents recorded the bill's serial numbers. They were prepared to make the drop as soon as they received instructions from the kidnappers. Two days after the kidnapping, police responded to a call from a Berkeley credit union. The FBI had asked the manager to call police if he saw the suspect from the Martinez bank robbery. He spotted Ural Wills trying to make a deposit.
Looks like it's all here. Bring up your account number.
The teller tried to access the account, but it was frozen.
Sometimes that works.
Berkeley police arrived and calmly approached the bank, but Wills spotted them. As they frisked Wills, Berkeley police retrieved a loaded clip for a 9mm Glock pistol. They also found Wills had something else to hide.
Located in his pocket was a key to a car. The police officers asked him where his car was parked. He denied owning a car. The officers then walked down the street checking vehicles until they located his vehicle.
The keys in Wills' pocket fit a Ford Explorer. FBI Supervisory Special Agent Bob Moore searched the impounded vehicle for evidence that would link Wills to the Martinez bank robbery. Instead, he uncovered the first break in the Ruth Mayer kidnapping case.
The key items of evidence found in the Ford Explorer the day of Wills' arrest were a cell phone, a weapon, a pager that belonged to Ural Wills, and a bag containing jewelry.
Agents had previously thought the Ruth Mayer kidnapping and Martinez bank robbery cases were unrelated. All that changed when they discovered some of the jewelry was personalized. RM were the initials of Ruth Mayer. Agents showed the jewelry to Ruth Mayer's husband, who confirmed it was stolen from their home. Investigators now considered Wills a suspect both in the Ruth Mayer kidnapping and the Martinez bank robbery. To further tie Wills to the Martinez bank robbery, FBI technicians performed ballistics tests on the Glock handgun recovered from Wills' vehicle. They compared the bullets test-fired by the Glock in the lab to bullets recovered from the Martinez bank crime scene. The tests indicated The bullets were not fired by the same gun. Investigators believed Wills probably disposed of the pistol used during the bank robbery and replaced it with another gun of the same make and model.
All right, we found the jewels in your car. I want to know where you were and what you were doing.
Wills was no longer just a bank robbery suspect. He was also a suspect in the Ruth Mayer kidnapping.
We can already connect you to Mrs. Mayer. What these jewels are doing in...
Desperate to save Mrs. Mayer's life, Antioch police asked Wills to tell them where she was being held. But Wills refused to cooperate. He remained silent on his involvement in the Ruth Mayer kidnapping. With Wills in jail, investigators were concerned his accomplices would panic and do something desperate.
This kidnapping certainly exhibits some organization to it. But
Authorities held a press conference to appeal for new leads. They also warned Wills' accomplices that they were closing in and that Mrs. Mayer should be released unharmed.
On the other hand, I can't say for certain, but certainly we're looking at them.
I've been here, that's what I'm telling you. Nobody's telling me nothing.
On the fourth day of Mrs. Mayer's captivity, Christmas Eve, the man guarding Mrs. Mayer received instructions from the other accomplices in the kidnapping plot. His orders were to get rid of Mrs. Mayer any way he could. The man ordered her to stay down and out of sight while he drove. Mrs. Mayer couldn't be sure whether she was going to live or die.
That's it?
Kidnapping victim Ruth Mayer had endured 4 days of captivity. The ringleader of the abduction, Ural Wills, was in police custody on bank robbery charges. That left Wills' accomplices leaderless, and they were worried that the law was closing in. The accomplices ordered the man guarding Ruth Mayer to get rid of her any way he could. "30 miles north of her Antioch, California home where she was abducted, in a town called El Sobrante, the kidnappers decided to get rid of Mrs. Mayer by releasing her.
Now don't take off your blindfold.
Antioch Police Sergeant Scott Williford believed police efforts to reach the kidnappers through the media paid off.
Well, they knew the seriousness of the crime. They knew the pressure was on. This was a national publicized case at the time, and they didn't know what to do. It was so high profile, everybody knew all the details of this, and they were forced to release her.
News of Ruth Mayer's return made headlines and the local newscasts.
I just want to say that I'm so very happy to be home.
Anything that you can...
Investigators questioned Mrs. Mayer about her ordeal. She didn't know the location in which she was held and could not describe her abductors. Even so, she provided agents with important detail.
She was able to use her senses as she was held in this garage and actually had remarkable recall as to a lot of the circumstances that were occurring in the area where she was held. She described certain sounds that she heard while she was held. She described the sound of trains going by. She described the sounds of buses or diesel-powered vehicles having to gear down or slow down as if to take a sharp turn.
We've gotten a fair amount.
Based on information obtained from Mrs. Mayer, investigators were looking for a location near train tracks and major bus lines. They used the cell phone seized in Will's vehicle to narrow the search. Agents quickly obtained the phone's billing records.
And they just make their way heading east.
They concentrated on calls Wills made around the time of Mrs. Mayer's kidnapping.
We were able to track the cell phone usage and determine where it had been in use the prior night, including in Antioch, and as well as the numbers that it had called that night.
Investigators learned towers in West Contra Costa County picked up Will's cell phone signal on the evening of the kidnapping. They began looking for streets in Contra Costa County where train tracks and major bus lines intersected. Based on Mrs. Mayer's observations, agents were looking for any home that had a vehicle covered with a blue tarp in the driveway.
We located the house in San Pablo, and just from the visual inspection outside, it matched the criteria and the description that Ruth Mayer gave us.
Agents obtained a search warrant for the home and found no one inside. Mrs. Mayer identified the garage as the place in which she was held. Agents wanted to question the home's owner, but they were unable to locate him. Investigators sought out homeowner's relatives in an effort to find him. Edward Rodriguez was the homeowner's nephew. Agents were unaware that he guarded Ruth Mayer during the kidnapping. But Rodriguez mistakenly believed the agents were looking for him and said he was just about to turn himself in.
Will be used against you in a court of law.
Investigators found Rodriguez remorseful about the part he played in the kidnapping and convinced him to cooperate.
How about picking out some for me?
Ultimately, the guard confessed to the whole crime, confessed to the planning, the details of the operation, and laid out the whole crime from A to Z.
Rodriguez named all the conspirators in the scheme.
Anybody else here on this page?
He said Ural Wills planned and led the kidnapping operation. Agents corroborated the guard's statements with Will's cell phone records. They later apprehended all the conspirators. Brian Tomasello, one of the gunmen that burst into the mayor's home, was found guilty on 6 counts of robbery and kidnapping and sentenced to life in prison. Edward Rodriguez was found guilty of kidnapping and robbery. The jury gave him a short 8-year sentence because he released Mrs. Mayer. Before he could be tried for the Ruth Mayer kidnapping, Ural Wills was found guilty of the Martinez bank robbery and was sentenced to 39 years. Prosecutors learned that Wills was suffering from kidney failure. Doctors gave him less than 10 years to live.
Ural Wills is already going to be...
Wills was certain to die in prison.
He's having serious kidney.
Prosecutors informed Mrs. Mayer of their plans not to try him for her kidnapping.
She's a forgiving person. She knew justice was served. She knew he was in custody, Mr. Wills, for the rest of his life. And I believe that she forgave everybody.
As he pursued his violent schemes, Ural Wills had expected to make millions and live a life of luxury. Instead, the FBI and local police made sure the criminal's last days were spent behind bars. At a bank outside Los Angeles, a nighttime explosion that no one hears. Cunning criminals no one sees. It's the perfect burglary in which cash and bandits vanish without a trace. With little to go on, the FBI must use instinct and determination to solve a case that seems impossible to crack.
Bank robbery is a brazen yet simple crime. A mask, a gun, a note passed to a teller. But bank burglary is different. It takes skill to disable an alarm, to penetrate a locked vault. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. In 1972, the largest bank burglary in U.S. history went down without a hitch. $8 million gone. Now agents must track a gang of sophisticated criminals with enough money to disappear forever.
Laguna Niguel, California, March 27, 1972. It's Monday morning at the United California Bank. Employees prepare to open for business. When the bank manager tries to unlock the vault door, it won't open.
Somebody call the safe company.
A technician from the vault manufacturer arrives 20 minutes later to check the door's locking system. He works for hours. The combination is right, the tumblers are in place, but unexplainably, even the expert can't get it open.
It's not working.
Looking for another way in, the technician climbs into the rafters above the vault. He is stunned to find a hole cut in the roof. Below, a second gaping hole leading to the vault. Agents from the FBI Santa Ana resident agency immediately respond to the bank. The first investigator to survey the cluttered crime scene is Special Agent Jim Conway.
Upon arriving and getting up on the vault and looking down at this hole, we could see a pile of rubble, I would say 6 feet tall and expanding out.
Once inside the vault, the technician discovers a screwdriver jammed into the lock's gears. Agents suspect the thieves wanted to delay the discovery of the crime. The place is a disaster.
My first impression was there was going to be a lot of time and effort needed to work this out. It was something we couldn't just plow into because we had a crime scene. We were able to walk in, a few of us, and look around and see what the extent was as best we could determine. But we're walking over watches and rings and valuables and everything else because it was all piled into this big cement mess.
Special Agent Frank Calley begins sorting through the chaos.
Just everything was thrown all over the place. There, the locks of hair, all kinds of check statements, photographs, things that people would normally put in a safety deposit box. I remember seeing urns with ashes of deceased people in there.
The agents begin the arduous task of determining how the burglars entered the seemingly impenetrable vault. They notice dark soil and pieces of burlap mixed with the cement rubble. Outside, they find the bank's audible alarm disabled. They also find a ladder. Interpreting the clues, investigators piece together the burglars' intricate plan to breach the vault. They disabled the alarm by injecting it with liquid styrofoam. It hardened, freezing the clapper in place and rendering the alarm useless. Then the burglars climbed onto the roof. Investigators find tape on a rooftop outlet, suggesting the burglars used the bank's electricity. When agents cannot find fingerprints on the tape, they conclude the burglars wore gloves, Fully powered, the burglars sawed a 4-foot opening into the roof.
Good, good. All right, we're in, we're in.
Once inside the rafters, they clearly knew how to bypass the interior silent alarm system.
They took a couple of the wires and that would have normally transmitted the alarm signal, and they clipped them both and soldered them together.
It was delicate, highly skilled work.
Knew right away they were smart. They did the homework.
Even with the alarm disabled, 16 inches of steel-reinforced concrete stood between the burglars and the contents of the vault. The only way through, an intensely powerful blast. Agents believe the bandits drilled holes into the cement, then inserted dynamite and electric blasting caps. The blast had to be precisely directed to blow through the cement without injuring the burglars or attracting attention. Agents conclude that the burlap fragments in the soil in the vault indicate that the burglars came prepared.
They placed the burlap bags over the explosive, not only to muffle the sound, but also it would direct the charge into the vault itself and keep the charge going into the concrete where they wanted it rather than coming back out where they were.
The investigators discover burn marks on the steel rebar that reinforces the cement. They conclude that the burglars knew the blast could not crack steel and came prepared with an acetylene torch. Agents turn their attention to assessing the total loss. Bank officials report $50,000 is missing from cash drawers. But the thieves were not content with the cash. They took the time to break into 458 safe deposit boxes. Investigators find tool marks on the locks of the boxes and deduce the burglars used a pointed instrument and a lot of brute force to break them open one by one. They carefully sorted through every item, leaving behind what they didn't want. Amazingly, the bandits were so methodical that they got in and out without being seen or heard. In 1972, most banks were closed on weekends. Agents conclude that the suspects took full advantage of that fact.
Apparently they had been in there several times, in and out over the weekend. They probably went in on Friday night, and they probably didn't get out till late Sunday night.
Not only had the burglars pulled off such a lengthy, complex crime, they did it without leaving a single fingerprint. Although investigators do find a brown cotton glove and broken drill bits, neither is unique enough to be traceable. Agents and deputies collect the debris for further examination at the crime lab. But with no apparent evidence and no witnesses, agents are facing the tough challenge of identifying and locating a group of highly skilled criminals, including electronics and explosives experts. Investigators turn their attention to determining the total loss from the safe deposit boxes. It will be extremely difficult since banks do not keep records of their contents.
Ordinarily, if you had a bank burglary, you would be missing cash. You'd go out and say, yes, we got to find $350,000 worth of cash. At this point, we did not know what was gone. It's a very affluent area. And so the possibilities of a tremendous amount of money and material being lost was evident.
Investigators begin the arduous task of carefully sorting and cataloging every item left in the vault. Then, by interviewing every box holder, agents learn the details of missing jewelry, rare gold coins, and bearer bonds. By a process of elimination, they slowly create a list of the stolen goods. The bank's loss of $50,000 in cash pales by comparison, as the value of the missing items rises to over $8 million. The heist has now become the largest bank burglary in U.S. history. With no physical evidence to go on, investigators hope to develop leads by thinking like the bandits.
We felt that they would need oxygen to burn the rebar, and so we canvassed hospitals, oxygen supply places, and things like that.
Despite checking every oxygen supplier in the area, agents come up with nothing.
We also felt that a drill of some type had to be used, obviously a large one, so we canvassed places to find if anybody had sold or rented a large drill, as we felt it would have to be used.
Again, agents go to dozens of equipment shops, checking records during the time surrounding the break-in. But they find no suspicious purchases or rentals.
Or the day before.
Clearly, the criminals in this case have masterminded and pulled off a nearly perfect heist. With no witnesses, no direct clues, and certainly no suspects, it seems impossible to solve. But the FBI is determined to identify the burglars and find them wherever they are. In March 1972, a professional crew of burglars blasted their way into a bank vault in Laguna Niguel, California, near Los Angeles. Over a weekend, they emptied hundreds of safe deposit boxes, made off with more than $8 million in cash and valuables, then disappeared without a trace. Agents believe they are an experienced band of criminals. The case is difficult to crack for the small Santa Ana FBI office. Needing more resources, they seek the help of the larger Los Angeles FBI field office. Special Agent Paul Chamberlain supervises the investigation.
At the time, it was our conclusion that this was the largest bank burglary in the history of the United States. We went to just about everyone in the office. It was several hundred agents, and that's not a typical response, but it became apparent that the crime was a significant crime.
The Santa Ana agents quickly briefed the Los Angeles office on the details.
We'd not had a bank burglary like that in recorded history in the Los Angeles division. Burglaries that did occur with banks involved a small effort, and this was a systematic, big-time operation that lasted over 3 days.
Since the burglars seem to be highly skilled professionals, yet have not struck Los Angeles before, agents conclude that they're probably from out of town. An agent sends a teletype to all other FBI offices, asking if anyone knows of similar bank burglaries. They get a hit from the Cleveland, Ohio field office, where agents have been investigating similar bank heists, 13 of them, in fact. The description of the California burglary immediately strikes a chord with them, including Special Agent Buddy Nix.
We knew from the modus operandi, the MO, the outside alarm had styrofoam spray placed in it to keep the audible alarm from activating, the fact that it was a roof job, the fact that the alarm system had been bypassed were all indications that bank burglary crews in Youngstown very well may have been involved.
The Ohio agents believe the 13 Ohio bank heists were committed by the Youngstown Erie Bank Burglary Group, a loose association of criminals tied to organized crime. The California agents were right. These are no small-time crooks.
Youngstown at that time was just a mecca for organized crime activities. I mean, they controlled the illegal gambling businesses, and they were, very much involved in interstate transportation of stolen property and tractor-trailer thefts, and there were burglary crews that were operating, and there were a lot of very sophisticated burglaries that were taking place at that time.
As part of earlier investigations, the Youngstown, Ohio agents have identified nearly 100 men believed to be part of the burglary group. They've collected intelligence on each of them. Agents send the men's names and mugshots to the Los Angeles FBI. There, investigators try to narrow the list. Since the criminals must have traveled to California, agents check airline passenger manifests from around the time of the burglary. Without the benefit of modern computers, it is a time-consuming process done by hand. After an exhaustive search, they find the names of 5 men from the Youngstown list who had boarded a recent flight to Los Angeles.
That's great.
Emil Dinzio, Harry Barber, Charles Mulligan, Charles Brockles, and Philip Christopher arrived in California 9 days before the heist. The 6th man, James Dinzio, came in on a different flight the day before the burglary. Finally, agents have developed suspects.
Dinzio and his brother, Emil Dinzio.
Agents review the intelligence gathered on the 6 members of the burglary group. All have long records for home and small business burglaries,
First suspect we're going to look
and
at
have done
today,
little jail time.
Emil. So if we get him,
Emil Dinzio appears to be the brains of the gang, the leader.
you need to pay attention to that picture and remember his face.
He plans the jobs and handpicks the team to pull them off.
This is Charles Brockles. This guy has a
Charles
history of-
Brockles is an explosives and electronics expert, well-versed in bank alarms. Agents believe Philip Christopher is a lookout for the gang.
He's known for his expertise in bank robbing.
The other gang members are all relatives of the leader and probably help with the grunt work. There's Emil's older brother, James,
His face only a mother could love.
and Charles Mulligan, Emil's brother-in-law.
Here, you're gonna really appreciate this guy. Yeah,
There's also Emil's nephew, Harry Barber.
Okay. Why don't you take a look at this guy?
The men are all seasoned professional criminals, well-connected in organized crime.
He's a lowlife.
The Youngstown, Ohio FBI has linked them circumstantially to many bank burglaries, but never had direct evidence.
All right, and he's
The
a
charges
lowlife.
never stuck.
He's a nobody, not a heavyweight, but we gotta.
The only information that links the suspects to the crime is that they were all in Los Angeles at the time of the burglary. Agents begin the difficult job of tracking their movements, starting at the airport.
We then canvassed and interviewed every cab driver at LAX that was working that day. That was a massive project.
If I showed you a couple pictures.
Agents spend days interviewing dozens of drivers. It finally pays off. One cab driver recalls taking a group of 5 men to a home in the nearby community of Southgate. He remembers the trip well.
The cab driver specifically remembered these folks for 2 reasons. One, because of the $100 tip, but for the other reason, they were tough, mean-looking guys.
Agents get the address from taxi records and decide to go there. But it is a risk. Agents fear that if the suspects find out they're investigating the burglary, they might skip town. They have to take the chance. It is their only lead, according to Special Agent Jim Conway.
But we had to interview somebody. We had to get our investigation started, and we were concerned that naturally that the rest of them would be aware that we were at least that close to identifying them.
Agents learn that the Southgate house belongs to the Barber family,
I don't have any idea.
Ronald Barber, the brother of suspect Harry Barber, agrees to an interview but is elusive.
Yeah.
We did not have a warrant or anything at that particular time. We had nothing positively to tie him to it. But the more he talked, the more he seemed to know, and the more we were impressed that he knows a whole lot.
Ronald Barber claims the 6 men were never at his house. Agents still have no direct evidence. Yet they believe Barber's story may be at least partially true. They note that the house seems too small to accommodate Ronald and 6 other men staying there. Agents conclude that at least some of them likely stayed elsewhere. So agents spread out, checking one hotel after another, starting with those closest to the bank. Special Agent Frank Calley.
We figured these fellows were high rollers. They knew they were going to get a big haul, so they were going to stay at a nice place. So we were knocking on the doors of every fine hotel in the LA, Orange County area.
It is more tedious, time-consuming footwork.
Thank you very much.
But they do not give up.
Sir, I'm with the FBI.
On a hunch, one agent decides to take a different approach.
There was an agent who figured that maybe they didn't stay at the best hotels, and he took it upon himself to walk into a truck stop hotel. And lo and behold, he found out that Emil Denzio had stayed there.
You're sure?
You're positive.
Emil Denzio is the leader of the burglary group.
But they would have been together, all 5.
Records show his brother-in-law, Charles Mulligan, also rented a room there around the time of the heist. Agents check Mulligan's registration card and find a license plate number.
It's Denzio.
They trace it to the Southgate address of Ronald Barber. Investigators now have 7 suspects, the 6 from Ohio and the local Ronald Barber. They still have nothing directly linking the men to the crime. But the investigation is finally rolling forward, and the FBI is closing in. Weeks after a well-planned multi-million-dollar bank burglary in Southern California, the FBI identifies 7 suspects. Ringleader Emil Denzio and his brother James Denzio, Charles Mulligan, Philip Christopher, and Charles Brockles, and Harry Barber and his brother Ronald Barber. A notorious gang of professional thieves based in Youngstown, Ohio. Agents determine at least 2 of the men stayed at an area motel days before the heist.
Okay.
Special Agent Paul Chamberlain is convinced the men are responsible, but he has no evidence to prove it.
By reference and innuendo, you kind of knew who was involved, but you need to have the evidence in federal court.
Agents subpoena the motel phone records and find a series of calls to a local man named Earl Dawson.
Our background investigation concluded he was a former military, a Marine guy with some training in munitions, explosives. And inasmuch as we had major explosions that occurred at the bank, he became interesting to us.
Special Agent Frank Calley learns of another interesting connection.
Yeah, we're going to be down on...
Dawson is from Youngstown, Ohio, the base of operations for the burglary group.
So the light goes off again, and we say, well, now we got another break. We got the connection somehow between the boys from Youngstown, the Denzios, and their cohorts in Dawson.
Look, I got these pictures out here.
The agents decide to approach Dawson at his house to convince him he should cooperate. They show him pictures of Emil Denzio and his associates and ask if he knows them. Dawson is reluctant to talk.
I was in the Corps as well.
Knowing Dawson is a former Marine, Special Agent Calley appeals to his sense of duty.
Earl was a very patriotic individual, and I'm a former Marine, and we just kind of played that. I said, come on, Earl, you know, you're a former Marine, you've served your country. I said, what's important, Earl? It's a big case. And he said, what is it? I said, heard about that bank burglary down in Laguna Niguel?
Calley's tactic works. Dawson comes clean. He admits knowing 3 of the suspects: Emil Dincio, Emil's brother James, and Charles Mulligan. He and Mulligan are old friends who grew up together in Youngstown. Dawson tells Callie that the day before the Laguna Niguel heist, Mulligan came to his house with the other suspects. Mulligan gave him $100 to leave the house for a few hours so they could hold a meeting. Dawson left without hearing what they discussed.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
But Dawson adds that he does have something the agents might want to see.
He shows up the other day.
Mulligan left a car in his garage. It's still there. It is a huge break. Perhaps the car holds the evidence they've been looking for. But before they can check it out, they're interrupted.
While I'm talking to him, the phone rings. He answers the phone and he picks it up and he points to the phone and he mouths the word Mulligan.
Thinking quickly, Agent Callie asks Dawson's permission to eavesdrop, a legal requirement for using what he hears in court. Dawson signals that there is another phone in the bedroom.
Mulligan comes out and he says, hey, has anybody at the FBI been around? Dawson says, no, they're not around. I think I almost had to laugh myself at the time listening to this. He's playing a beautiful role out there. He's really flip-flop. He's on our side now.
Mulligan explains that he knows the FBI has been asking questions about him and his cohorts, and that they're getting worried. And he's heading back to the Los Angeles area.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Mulligan said, I want to come out tonight and to see us. I'm going to move the car in the garage.
Agent Callie seizes the opportunity to trap Mulligan. But he fears that he might be setting up Dawson
Yeah, that'd be great.
and the FBI.
Didn't know for sure this officer, he could be sitting across the street at the time watching us, for all we know, with our FBI car sitting out front.
Callie instructs Dawson to arrange a meeting with Mulligan in a public place. Dawson tells Mulligan to meet him at his favorite bar, the Walnut Room. Mulligan agrees. Now agents have a chance to inspect the car Mulligan left in the garage. But it does not belong to Dawson, so he cannot give them permission to search it. Through the window, they can see a pair of brown cotton gloves, exactly like the one found in the vault. The back seat is covered in what appears to be cement dust, similar to the debris found at the crime scene. It is the probable cause agents need to obtain a search warrant for the car. They also obtain an arrest warrant for Charles Mulligan and set up surveillance at the Walnut Room. Plainclothes agents position themselves inside the bar, not far from Dawson.
We staked it out, so to speak. Four of us were inside waiting, and we had a couple of men outside waiting for him to arrive.
Dawson introduces Agent Callie to some regulars as a buddy from the Marine Corps. The agents have to look natural while staying sharp. Earl Dawson's safety is their primary concern.
We didn't know what was going to happen, so we had to protect Earl.
Agents devise a method for Callie and Dawson to communicate. Either one of them can signal the other by simply going to the restroom where they will meet. 3 hours later, Mulligan finally arrives. He appears to be alone and greets his old friend, who tries to get him to talk about the heist.
I didn't want to be too close. I was across the bar from him. Earl was talking to him and asking him something about, you were involved in that deal down in Laguna Niguel. And old Mulligan said, well, what do you think?
Unable to hear everything they're saying, Callie heads to the restroom. Dawson follows. In the men's room, Callie asks for an update. Dawson explains that Mulligan is anxious to leave and to pick up the car from Dawson's garage.
No problem. Okay.
Callie tells him to go, but instructs Dawson not to get into Mulligan's vehicle.
Whatever you do, don't get inside that car. Okay, don't get in the car.
What Callie doesn't tell him is that agents are in the parking lot, poised to capture Mulligan. Agents finally make the first arrest in the case. As they take Mulligan into custody, they pretend to arrest Dawson as well to mask his involvement with authorities. Mulligan is charged with bank burglary. He does not resist arrest. But when agents try to question him, he refuses to talk. They hope to find answers in the car he was trying to pick up. Agents return to Dawson's house and search the car in the garage.
We found this large motor used as a drill and some other tools that we felt were very much probably the ones that were used in the actual committing of the crime.
Agents recover stolen coins, along with drill bits, acetylene torches, hammers, and other items that could have been used for the Laguna Niguel heist.
Exactly.
And we felt very good about it. Felt we hit pay dirt, we hit a home run.
Evidence technicians ship everything to the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. for processing. As examiners take days to analyze the evidence, field agents follow up on more phone records from the motel. One number belongs to a real estate agency in Laguna Niguel, California. A manager shows agents a condo she rented to suspects Ronald and Harry Barber days before the burglary. The Barbers told her they planned to stay 3 months, but left after only 3 weeks.
No damage, no problems.
She was able to put the day that they got there and the day they left together for us.
It was rented to Ronald Barber.
The men moved out suddenly on March 27th, the day the crime was discovered.
He rented it for 3 months.
The manager gives investigators permission to search the condo, which is within sight of the targeted bank. Agents begin processing the condo for evidence, but initially find nothing.
The entire inside had been wiped clean with some kind of a product.
It seems the suspects were as meticulous there as they had been during the burglary.
There was no evidence recovered at the bank of any value, and therefore, it was not surprising to see a place that had been wiped down. It appears as if they had done everything to ensure there was no evidence. They'd done just about everything right.
But in fact, they made one crucial mistake.
One of the evidence persons went to the dishwasher and opened the dishwasher and realized that it was loaded with dirty dishes and that someone had neglected to push the on button.
The dirty dishes are covered with multiple latent fingerprints. At the FBI lab, examiners recover the prints from the dishes and from the tools agents found in Mulligan's car and match them to 5 of the 7 suspects. Toolmark experts examine the damage on the safe deposit boxes and compare them to the striking point of a snout-nosed hammer from Mulligan's trunk. They report another match. The FBI's case is gaining momentum with good circumstantial evidence and one suspect in custody.
All right.
Now agents must find the other 6 and enough evidence to put them away for good. In Southern California, the FBI connects a team of 7 members of an organized crime ring based in Youngstown, Ohio, to a multi-million-dollar bank burglary when they recover tools used in the heist from the car of suspect Charles Mulligan. Mulligan's arrest puts the investigation into high gear, according to Special Agent Paul Chamberlain.
We did realize that with the arrest of Mulligan, eventually, and shortly thereafter, they were going to figure out that we had figured who this group was. And therefore, we heightened our investigation. We did everything as fast as we possibly could.
But since most of the evidence is circumstantial, the case hinges on the testimony of informant Earl Dawson, a man the FBI must protect.
Go ahead and leave with him, all right? But whatever you do, whatever happens.
Earl was probably the key witness because the case was kind of dry all along. It's physical evidence. Burglaries are very dry. Earl was able to put all the principals together. They were charged with conspiracy and burglary, and they could put them all together at his house.
Dawson begins receiving threatening phone calls, pressuring him to keep quiet. The caller insists on a face-to-face meeting to discuss the matter. But the FBI learns the meeting may have a more sinister purpose.
We received informant information that a contract was put out on Earl Dawson's life. They were going to come out and attempt to kill Dawson.
Agents instruct Dawson to arrange a meeting at his favorite bar, the Walnut Room. But don't tell him about the planned hit. Agents want to confront the men to send a message to the Youngstown crime ring that the FBI is on to them. Agents are confident that they can protect Dawson as long as he stays in a public place.
I told him, Earl, don't leave this bar. Whatever you do, don't go any place with this. You don't ever leave that room. You stay right in that bar.
As before, if either Dawson or Callie needs to communicate, they will meet in the restroom. The alleged hitmen arrive.
I started buying Earl some pretty heavy drinks. Earl was basically a beer drinker, but you could see they were trying to switch him up to stronger drinks.
When Dawson starts to look concerned, Callie heads to the restroom.
Come on, hurry up. Get him right out of here.
Dawson tells the agent he's scared. The hitmen want him to leave with them.
I said, Earl, you're not leaving this place with him. Leaving, you're not leaving.
Agent Callie tells Dawson to wait in the restroom.
Listen, stay right here, and I'll be right back to get you. All right, just stay right here. Okay, hurry up.
The agents finally approach the men. They say they know what they came to do.
It's time to get out.
Let's go.
To the hitmen, the message is clear. Stay away from Dawson.
They had no problem leaving. I went directly to LAX, where they were escorted by LA's finest to an aircraft, and they left Southern California.
To keep Earl Dawson safe for good, the FBI decides to put him in the witness protection program.
You're gone. You're not going to see.
Agents then go after the remaining burglary suspects. Investigators secure warrants to search their last known addresses. At one house, agents get their first direct link to the burglary. Inside a woman's purse, they find a new $20 bill. They compare it to the list of serial numbers of sequence bills taken from the bank. It's a match. Special Agent Buddy Nix at the Youngstown FBI office receives information from an informant indicating that these gang members had been known to bury the cash they stole until they could launder it safely.
We identified about a 20 or 25 acre field that we had information that some of the loot was buried in. We dug in that field for days on end, and using picks and shovels and probes, and we finally rented a bulldozer.
The land is adjacent to property owned by James Dincio. After more than a week of digging, agents hit the jackpot. They unearth several footlockers filled with millions of dollars in cash and bonds that they're able to trace back to the Laguna Niguel bank burglary. Agents then get yet another tip. A neighbor of gang leader Emil Dincio calls police.
A lot of money in there.
He reports finding a cooler buried in his yard. It is filled with nearly $100,000.
Right over there, Mr. Dincio.
Investigators match their serial numbers to those taken from the bank and recover Emil Dincio's prints from the cooler. With more direct evidence against the gang, agents begin making arrests. They first go to Ronald Barber's Southgate, California home. They are armed with search warrants. The only person they find is Ronald's mother. The brothers have disappeared.
No, I don't. I haven't seen him in a
All 6 remaining suspects are still at large. 3 months after a multi-million-dollar bank burglary, the FBI has solid evidence against 7 members of an organized crime ring. With only one suspect in custody, Charles Mulligan, they set out to arrest the others. Emil Dincio, James Dincio, Charles Brockles, Philip Christopher, Harry Barber, and Ronald Barber. Agents go to Emil Dincio's home near Youngstown, Ohio, and discover he's made no attempt to run.
Because of his attitude and his air of arrogance, Mr. Dincio actually believed he was above the law and was the kind of guy that could make things happen his way.
When agents arrest Dincio, he is carrying $537 in cash stolen from the Laguna Niguel Bank.
Come on, we'll call it.
Other gang members are also surprisingly easy to find. Within days, authorities arrest Emil's brother, James Dincio, at an Ohio airport. His carry-on luggage is full of more money from the heist. Agents make their 4th arrest, nabbing Phil Christopher. In his apartment, they discover over $32,000 in stolen cash hidden in his closet. The 3 men arrogantly maintain their innocence and refuse to cooperate.
I got a deal right here.
2 months later, agents nab alarm expert Charles Brockles and get a break. They decide to confront him with what evidence they have and explain they can put him away for decades. They offer him a deal. In exchange for his full cooperation in outlining the burglary group and their crimes, prosecutors will drop all charges against Brockles and place him in the witness protection program. He agrees. Authorities have captured 5 of the 7 suspects. Everyone except the Barber brothers. Authorities extradite them to California and indict them on charges of conspiracy, burglary, and larceny of a federally insured bank. While in jail, Emil Dincio brags about the heist to another inmate and asks for his help in beating the charges.
Mr. Dincio confided in him a great many details that were not in his best interest to confide. He got this other inmate to help him buy an alibi for the time of the bank burglary.
But Dincio has chosen the wrong accomplice.
The other inmate was someone who had had contact with law enforcement on many occasions in the past, and he realized that what he was being told would be of some importance to someone, and he came to us.
Hoping to receive a lenient sentence for his own burglary case, the inmate tells agents of Dincio's confession and the plan to purchase an alibi.
And that was Vegas? Vegas? Well, that's where his alibi is.
The alibi was that Mr. Dincio was going to be in a hotel room in Las Vegas with a prostitute and with physical evidence that would show that he was there.
The FBI sets up a sting. Agents give the inmate a contact to offer Dincio. The contact is actually an undercover agent who will provide Dincio's alibi materials. Dincio takes the bait. At the jail's visitation room, He meets the undercover agent who plays the role of a fixer, a criminal expert in solving problems.
Mr. Denzio received what he asked for. He got a registration card, which he registered in on. He put his fingerprint on it. He got a listing of shows, and he got the name of a prostitute who he was with, and that became part of his subsequent defense.
In October 1972, the trials begin in Los Angeles. Emil Denzio offers his false alibi, but the FBI's undercover fixer testifies about the sting. The jury convicts Denzio and the other 4 defendants. They receive sentences ranging from 15 to 20 years. But it is not over. 2 suspects, Harry and Ronald Barber, are still on the run. Within months, the FBI receives a tip that the 2 brothers are living in an apartment in Rochester, New York. Agents respond, and Ronald Barber answers the door. They arrest him and return him to California, where a jury convicts and sentences him to 15 years. He refuses to say where his brother Harry is. For 8 years, Harry remains a fugitive. Then, in 1980, a woman in Brookville, Pennsylvania, contacts the FBI.
I knew him as Brent.
She tells agents that her friend has been living with a man who told her he committed a famous bank burglary in California,
The other day, only because.
What's her name?
and that his real name is Harry Barber.
It's Harry Barber. Worried and nervous.
The woman tells the FBI that in an attempt to lead a legitimate life, the fugitive is working maintenance at a local campground.
Here, you know?
Agents move in and arrest him.
Hey, Barber. Hey, Barber. The FBI, hands in the air. Drop flyers.
Harry Barber is convicted and sentenced to 20 years. Agents can finally close the case on the largest bank burglary in United States history. Authorities believe Emil Denzio and his gang committed more than a dozen bank burglaries, stealing over $30 million altogether. By putting them away, FBI agents from Ohio to California stopped one of the most sophisticated bank burglary rings of all time.